This is Tell Me What It's Like, a show about life-changing decisions, extraordinary challenges, and defining moments. I'm Stacey Rain. Victoria Vaughn was married for 30 years until one day she wasn't. After an amicable divorce, she was newly single and back in the dating pool. But she says, looking back, that pool was filled with frogs. It was such a journey that she even wrote a book about it called Oh, the Frogs I've Kissed. Dr. Victoria Vaughn, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Stacey. So great to be here.
Vicki, you were married for 30 years, which is quite a long time, and then you got divorced. And you said it was amicable.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean when it comes to divorce?
Well, a lot of divorces are filled with acrimony.
Mm-hmm.
People fighting over finances and children and all kinds of stuff. We didn't do any of that. First of all, the kids were grown. They were 19 and 17, I think. And it just wasn't worth that to be acrimonious. You know, he and his wife stay at our house whenever they come down here to visit our daughters.
Wow. That is amicable.
Right. So there's just no need for that, in my humble opinion. And we were lucky that we were able to work that out.
Right.
So it was great. I mean, not great to go through the divorce, but it was great the way we handled it, I think.
Right. And how long after you guys separated, you went through the divorce, did you decide, I'm gonna hop back in to the dating pool and see what that's like?
As it happens, I was recruited to work at a college in Chicago. I'm down here in Austin, Texas. And so that little change of venue helped me out, even though I loved visiting Chicago. I didn't necessarily want to live there because to me, it was like the frozen tundra. But that's where I was led to go. And I went up there kicking and screaming because I would apply for jobs here in Austin that had my name on the position description.
Yeah.
And I would come in second or third or not at all. And I would say, Lord, what's going on here? And then I get this job and they send me up there for a marathon of interviews, 8 hours. And I met everybody in the institution practically. And they made me an offer on the spot.
Wow.
And I kept saying, why, Lord, why am I here? But here's the deal, Stacey. It all worked out for the best because that's where my prince was eventually. I didn't know that at the time, but I met him through a dating site. And had I been here in Austin and he there in Illinois, we never would have met. We would have closed the match for distance. So it was, I think it was God's intention that I go up there, and that's why I went up there. So that was a very long answer to a very easy question. It was a couple of months after I'd been transferred that I started dating. I got up my nerve to do it. I decided, okay, I don't want to be single because I'd been married for 30 years and I didn't know what it was like to be single.
And you got married in your 20s, correct?
Yes, 25.
Yes. So it's fairly young. You kind of been an adult with someone else for 30 years. And you're an educator. So you were going to Chicago to work at a university?
Yes, as a dean and a college administrator, yes.
Okay, so you decide I'm going to get back in the dating pool. And you said you met your prince on a dating site. So did you go straight to, that was sort of when online dating had become a thing. So is that what made you decided to go that route?
The reason I went that route is because the people at my church were 30 years older than I was, and the people where I worked were 30 years younger. So it was it was just easier to find people on a dating site than it was to find anybody that I worked with. I did meet people through mutual friends and at work, but most of these frogs came from the dating sites. And
that's the culprit.
It was 3 years into it whenever I met my prince. So
let's talk about, so that I was thinking, okay, the last time you dated, you were in your 20s.
Mhm.
It's been 30 years. You're in your 50s at this point. The first thing that's different is you can do online dating.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
brand new.
Exactly. Right. Didn't have it back 31 years ago, no. So, yeah, it was quite an experience, and I tried all of them. I tried all the free sites, I tried the ones where you pay. Shout out to eHarmony. It was the most expensive one, but it was also the most thorough one in terms of vetting out candidates and, or
Mm.
candidates.
I
Uh,
mean, it's
right,
kind of
right.
what it is.
But, they make you fill out this, questionnaire and it figures out what's important to you, your values, and things like that, and we were compatible on 85% of those.
Oh, wow.
So that was pretty good start.
Was that unique to him?
I think it was,
Mm-hmm.
because he'd had a few frogs in his life too. His first
Right.
wife passed away. They were
Mm-hmm.
married 44 years, and she had died 4 or 5 years before, so
So what else, before you're finding him and you're cycling through these frogs, as you call them, what else were you finding that was different for dating after 30 years?
well, the baggage was the main thing. The frogs in high school, every pond has frogs, but, the frogs in high school don't have the divorces and marriages and children and mortgages and debt and all kinds of stuff that we acquire as we age
Oh
and
my
we become
gosh.
who we are.
Yeah, I thought about divorce and children and all those things. I hadn't thought about debt.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, and
Wow.
that's an important one. One of the
Right.
frogs in here, well, most of the frogs in here were drowning in credit card debt.
In your book. Oh.
Mhm,
How did
mhm.
you how did you uncover this? Like, is this just a question you ask on the first date? Like, hey, how's your
Well,
credit score?
you know what? If I had it to do over, that's one of the first things I would ask moving forward, because I'd
Really?
want his, I didn't have any debt, I wasn't gonna pay off his, and if he was
Mm-hmm.
looking for me to pay off his, he was not for me. And I know there are gold diggers on both sides, both men and women, I just didn't happen to be one, and I didn't wanna get involved with one. So, it that
Right.
the finances, no finance, no romance, date your wage, that's very important,
Mm-hmm.
especially as a senior, because, it shows responsibility. How responsible are you in maintaining what you've acquired? And if you cash in your 401k to buy a boathouse or a Tesla, I mean, come on, really? That's
Yeah.
so short-sighted to me. I don't get that.
Yeah, which I think, that's definitely advice that I've given to people who are trying to find their mate when they're younger. Like
Mhm.
you want to date somebody who thinks about finances the same way you do, which is very similar, but I mean, I just had not even thought about that people could rack up tons and tons of debt. I didn't
Mhm.
realize they'd be looking for somebody to pay it off.
Right. Yes.
That's shocking.
Yes.
Do you have what did this happen to you? Like you meet a guy and you're talking, and then all of a sudden you realize like, oh, he wants me to
Well,
pay some of this.
I was college dean. I was paid very well,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm highly educated, as you well know, and sometimes that intimidates people,
Oh,
especially guys. And I can understand that. It did not intimidate my prince, but he was very confident in his own skin. But yeah, some of the guys, they would just say, my second wife racked up so much debt, and now I'm trying to pay all that off, and blah 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 blah. And
uh,
one of the things that a lot of the guys would have children from different wives.
oh, yeah. That tells you something.
Exactly. And I thought, what is with that? I
Yeah.
mean, I don't have it. I'm not going to pass judgment on anybody who's been divorced. Obviously, I was. But, I did have trouble getting my arms around that, having one kid with one wife, divorcing her, having another kid with another wife, divorcing her. Just it was like a marathon thing of, or, what do you call it? A carousel. Let's get on and get off. I
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand that.
Yeah. So first thing that's different is just the way you meet people. Online dating had risen to prominence. The second thing is people come with a lot more baggage,
Yes.
including credit card debt, which I hadn't thought
Mhm.
of. Um, is there anything else that you were noticing as you were back in the dating pool?
One thing I noticed is that, a lot of people embellish their profiles. They may put a photo on there that's 10 or 12 years older.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're expecting to go meet somebody that looks like their profile picture, and, they're 10 or 12 years older.
Right. Right.
So they're not totally honest. The other thing is, as we age, things start to happen to our bodies. We lose teeth and hair and hips and knees and other body parts. That just goes with being who we are, the mature people that we are.
Yeah. But there's also, I think, a lot of value in aging and
Mhm.
becoming wiser and, like
Oh,
sort of it's a
absolutely.
give and a take.
That's who we are. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's awesome because that's what makes up the people that we become.
Right. And so there's a
Yeah.
potential that you're going to meet hopefully one or two that are older and wiser and all of these things that
Right.
come with experience and with age. And
Mhm.
it sounds like you go through a few duds and then you find the
Yeah.
right one.
Mhm.
But I definitely would love, a story or two about getting to Mr. Right, right? Like you sound like you got a few.
Oh, I've got
You
a
wrote a
lot of
whole
them, my dear. That's all here.
you wrote a whole book about it.
Well, let's see. Okay, so one guy, I called him Hickey
Oh.
because, okay, here's how it would work. We'd meet online. We'd talk on the phone. We didn't text so much then because everybody had a flip phone that wasn't
Mhm.
quite as cool as it is now. But we talk on the phone, talk on the phone, talk on the phone. Then we'd both decide, okay, it's time for us to meet in person. So I always chose a public place, which
Mhm.
was Barnes and Noble, because I love to read.
Oh.
And I figured, you know what? If they didn't show up or didn't turn out, I'd just buy a book and go home.
Yeah.
So this one guy, he didn't post a picture on his profile, but he said he looked like George Clooney's first cousin. So I'm getting there, and he was an architect, but now he was recruiting architects. So he said he could make more money recruiting architects than being.
Mhm.
So I get there, and I'm in the clearance table circling, looking for this guy, George Clooney's first cousin, and so I see this guy leaning against the self-improvement area. He has a cane, but my guy didn't mention that he had a cane, so I thought, "Well, that's not him." And he didn't look anything like George Clooney's cousin, so I think, "Okay, well, he decided not to come." So I pick up a book, and I'm going to pay for it, and he comes, "Tori." I go, "Really? Hickey?" And he goes, "Yeah." Well, you know what he looked like? He looked like the love child between Andy Griffith and Alfred E. Newman from Mad
Hmm.
Magazine. You're probably too young to remember Mad Magazine.
I
Big
don't know
ears,
those references.
freckles, nowhere near the George Clooney ancestry tree. Not a trace of George Clooney in that guy. That's okay. I just wish he would have been upfront with me about that. Because you know what? I would have said, okay, that's fine. I'm looking for the love child between Andy Griffith and Alfred E. Newman. I get it. But that's not what happened. He presented himself, and it got worse from there. We proceeded to go to lunch, and by lunch, I mean it was 4:15. So we went to a cafeteria, which I hadn't been to since my mom was alive. She loved cafeteria food, but anyway, he ordered so much food, and I just got like a salad and a glass of tea and I think a piece of chicken or something, but the whole conversation was him complaining about his job and his life and his 2
Mm.
wives and on and on and on, and, then he starts tapping on the, receipts on the table,
Uh-oh.
and I said, "Okay, what do you know, is one of my is my receipt in there?" And he goes, "Yeah, yeah." I said, "Okay, well, I'm gonna pay for mine, and it was nice meeting you." And he says, "Oh, well, why don't you pay for mine too?" Anyway,
Mm.
long story
Okay.
short, I did
Delete
pay
that
for
number.
you know what? At that time, I had one credit card and my debit card, and I didn't carry a whole lot of cash. I think I had $5 cash, and I think the bill was 18, 20, 20. I don't remember, but I was gonna use, my debit card, and so I'm rumbling around for that. I'm in line to pay, and he reaches over and just puts a hickey right on my neck here. And I go, "What are you
Whoa.
what?" And, what is going on with you, pal?" And it was just so invasive and rude, and,
Yeah.
so that's one of my stories.
Well,
Needless to say,
wow.
I read my book that I went home to my book that day. I never saw him again because, what a jerk. He was just so obnoxious.
Yeah, that's a little shocking to get physical.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
right, yeah.
Goodness. Well, so you had many
Mhm.
experiences like this.
Would you like to hear
Um,
another?
of yes, I would.
Alright, well, there was another guy. He was very charming over the phone, and by the way, all these guys made me laugh. It was wonderful. But
Yeah.
I go to the Barnes& and Noble, and in walks a guy with a pair of shorts and, flip-flops and a kind of a baggy old T-shirt. I thought, "Well, that's not him." And it was him. "Oh,
Mm.
I've been cleaning out my garage, and I was working all day, and I almost forgot."
Oh.
And he didn't even shower before he came to meet me, and if I had it to do over again, I'd go, "Okay, well, you go home and shower, and we'll do this another time, goodbye." But I didn't, because he was very apologetic and ugh. Anyway, we just had coffee that day. We agreed to meet the week following. He was a lot better looking after he'd showered and gotten dressed. But that's when the vitriol started to come out of his mouth, because he was a racist and a sexist.
Oh, goodness.
It just made my skin crawl.
How did you end things?
I just said, "You know what? I can't be around somebody like you. So,
Yeah.
I'm gonna bid you goodbye and, have a good life. Goodbye." So, see,
Wow.
some of these dates, I put him over in the frog section because he was just so totally obnoxious. Usually the frogs I spent more time with.
So you went through the ringer.
Oh my goodness, yes. And you know what? Having said all that, I'm sure I was the frog for some of these guys too, but that's
Yeah.
okay, because,
Yeah.
to find your prince, you have to be his princess. It has to work both ways, so
Yeah. And I've heard you say that before. I appreciate that, maybe not in this fella's case, but in other cases,
yeah.
the things that drive you nuts
Mhm.
may be something that someone else adores
Right,
because
exactly.
we all like
Mhm,
different things.
mhm,
So I love that acknowledgement,
mhm.
but this sounds like a special
No,
case.
that's I would never ever I don't know anybody that could ever abide somebody as toxic as he was.
No, that's exactly what I was thinking. So how did you end up finding your prince? So you found him on eHarmony.
Mhm,
You guys were a really great match.
mhm.
How did you know I mean, I feel like I'm going to know the answer to this question with those stories, but how did you know that this is the guy? He's not a frog.
Well, first of all, I had just, upped my eHarmony membership to 2 years.
Mm.
It was cheaper to do 2 years of a membership, and I did 2 years because I was not optimistic at all.
Mm.
I was not optimistic. But, I did that in August, and I met him in September, and so there was 2 years of membership that went down the drain because I never thought to, "Hey, can I get a refund? We're kind of an island
Yeah.
now." But, I knew he was my prince for a couple of reasons. One is he accepted me, warts and all,
Hmm.
and I never felt like the other shoe was gonna drop, that he was gonna go, "Oh, by the way, bump, I've
Hmm.
been married 17 times," or I owe 200,000
Yeah.
in debt, or I never ever ever felt that. I always felt safe around him.
Yeah.
And that's a very warm and fuzzy feeling, as it should be. And plus, there's no question that chemistry counts for these things. You have to have the chemistry there. And
Hmm.
I just thought he was cute as a button, and he thought I was cute as a button, and so it was a match made in heaven as far as both of us were concerned. So
Right.
yeah.
I I keep thinking about this idea of confidence. It takes a certain level of confidence to date when you're in your 20s. I'm guessing you have to sort of grab that confidence again when you're getting back in the dating pool 30 years later. Is that something that you like? Did you sort of were you nervous at all? I guess is my question. Did you have
Oh
to
my
kind of,
word, yes. Oh, yes, yes,
yeah.
yes, yes. I just thought, "Oh boy, what am I doing?" I haven't done
Mm-hmm.
this in so long, and the dating there were you know, every species has mating rituals. Ours happens to be dating. But there is so
Mm,
much protocol that goes into dating that, the first couple of dates, you just, "Oh, how are you? What do you" and it's not that you're putting on an act, but you are putting your best foot forward,
right.
um, because, you do want to get another date, I guess, if it's meant to be. The thing that I kept thinking about, if I had it to do over again, I would do a couple of things. I would pace myself a little more, and I would
Mm-hmm.
I would stop trying to find, the one, because
Mm,
I kept trying to put square pegs into round holes. I just
mm,
kept trying to make it fit. So
really?
what if he talks only about himself? So what if he drinks too much? So what? And I thought, "No, I don't like that. I don't want an alcoholic.
Yeah.
If it's okay if you do. I just don't want one in my life. I don't want a drug addict. I don't want somebody drowning in debt."
Mm-hmm.
Um, on
It's
and
like,
on and on, and I used to kinda beat myself up about it because I thought, "Well, you're just being too picky." But you know what? You should be picky because it is your life. You have a right to be picky. This is your life. It's not, I mean, this is my life, not your life. This is my life. So I do have to be picky about me, what I need and what I want.
mm-hmm.
And that sounds very self-centered. I guess it is. But on the other hand, why shouldn't it be?
Yeah, when you're talking about settling down with
Mhm,
somebody that you want to spend the rest of your life with, yeah,
mhm,
you have to be picky.
mhm.
Um, and you don't want to compromise the things that you want
No,
when you're talking about your whole life.
right.
We're not talking about just a
Because whenever
friend to
you
go
do
out.
that, you're just gonna wind up with another failure. Yeah, I didn't want to be
Mm.
divorced again because 'cause I'd made a bad choice. I wanted to make the right choice going in.
And then you did.
Yeah, I did.
You met your prince.
Mhm,
What I guess you said you didn't feel like the other shoe was going to drop. There's a lot of different things about him
mhm.
that set him apart from all of these other people. And then how did you guys decide like this is it?
That's an interesting story too because it was almost whirlwind,
Oh.
and we met in September, and we were married in May. And, in January, I actually broke up with him because I thought he was
Oh.
too good to be true. He was very gracious about it. He just said, "Oh, that's so I understand," and, on and on, and I just thought, uh, I don't know, it took me about a week or so, and I thought, "What kinda Vicky, you're being so stupid about this. He is perfect. He is a wonderful human being.
Mm.
So you call him back and you eat some humble pie and ask for, if you can come back into his life." And he was very gracious. He said, "Of course, I missed you too." So, but he did give me that space to come to the realization that he was the right one for me. I guess he knew I
Mhm.
was the right one for him. He was waiting for me to decide. And I did. And then from there on, from January, February, and so forth, it just became even better after that.
Yeah. You had adult children at this point. What did they think about your dating
Okay,
life and
well,
this new
they met,
prince?
I was so grateful because they saw things in some of these guys that I certainly didn't. One I actually did bring down to celebrate my older daughter's 21st birthday when it was, and, um, he said, "I wanna go too," so he did come down, and they go, "Mom, what is with" not in front of him, of course, but
Mhm.
no. No, this is a definite no. He's kind of a hick. I didn't see that part, but, he's not for you, blah, 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 blah. And, he really wasn't. He was cheating on me, and he did cheat on me. So, but then whenever I brought Don down, my prince, they loved him. They said, "He is such a sweet man." And,
Yeah.
we'd come down for I don't remember, some kinda thing. Oh, it was Halloween, I guess. Yeah, we met in September, we were down here in October, and they loved him.
Yeah.
We stayed in a hotel, I stayed with my daughter's, apartment, and that was the other thing. I'll be very candid here. I there are certain expectations about sex that go with these dates,
Mhm.
and, I guess I decided I was gonna do a celibate life before I met
Mhm.
Don. And that was part of that trying to find the one, because I just thought, "You know what? I'm gonna save myself for something more serious." And, that's what I was doing with him,
Mhm.
and he appreciated that too, he wanted it that way too. Because on our
Yeah.
honeymoon, the day we did get married, it was great. So,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
he
So
was even more perfect.
and his values aligned with yours,
Mhm. Exactly.
which is important. So your kids were supportive too,
Absolutely, they
clearly, if
were.
they're weighing in.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah. And Don he's the reason you wrote this book. Of course, like he's the prince that you found, but also he eventually passed away.
Yes.
I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
But you've said that it was in your grief that
Yes.
this book started coming to you. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, he did have Parkinson's disease. You don't die from Parkinson's, you die from complications of Parkinson's.
Mm.
Parkinson's is a very progressive disease. It gets worse. It never, ever gets better, and there is no cure. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's right after we married, and,
Mm.
his mother had had it, so he kinda was thinking that maybe he would get it, although at the time, there was no genetic, connection. But it was fine. First 5, 6 we were together 12 and a half years. The first 10 years, it was fine. It was getting worse, but it was still fine. It was something that we could cope with. And then, because the thing I loved about the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Research is they are desperately looking for a cure, but also they have discovered a genetic link, and also they're coming up with medications that help. One of the worst things about Parkinson's is the dyskinesia, shaking,
Mhm.
and they have a medicine that controls that, and so instead of this,
It's more of a trimmer.
it's not as noticeable, but that
Yeah.
pill alone costs $7,000 a month.
Wow.
Right, and so Michael J. Fox helps get grants to help with we had, health insurance I mean, medical,
Yeah.
prescription, insurance, but that still didn't cover, I mean, 7,000, and that was one of 7 meds that he took 4 times a day.
Wow.
Towards the end there, I did have to have help. I was his caretaker for about 4 or 5 months, but I was older myself, and, that became
Mhm.
something that was certainly not sustainable for me or for him, for me to be his sole caretaker, so we did get help with that, and Medicare doesn't pay for any of that. This comes all out of your own pocket, so, yeah.
Goodness. Well, and this book came out of your grief because you started thinking about
Yeah,
how you ultimately
right,
found him. So you started to write this in your grief,
yeah.
and 10% of the proceeds.
So what happened is after he did pass away, um, my older daughter and her husband, came and said, "Mom, we want you to move in with us." And I said, "Oh, wonderful, but no, you're I need my space. I'm independent."
Yeah.
And, 'cause we had a big house, I was kinda rattling around in that house. And, anyway, they came and we decided we would build a house together, which we did. It took a year. It took them 14 months to build this house because of it was right after COVID, and there were supply chain and labor shortages, etcetera. But I was sitting in my own little space after we'd moved in.
Mhm.
This is about 2 years after he'd passed, and I was thinking, "Okay, now what?" So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking I started thinking about him. I do think about him a lot even to this day, but I just kept thinking, "Hmm, things would be different if you were still with me, but you're not, so I accept that." I certainly had to go through a lot of frogs to get to you. So I started writing those stories down.
Yeah.
And, as you've heard, they they made me laugh. I thought, "Oh my gosh, I lived through that. Oh, oh."
Eh,
And so after 10 or 12 stories, I gave them to a friend of mine. I did type them up. Oh, and by the way, I used to journal whenever I was dating these guys, and I
mhm.
found those journals whenever we were emptying out my house.
Yeah.
And I thought, "I'm gonna hold on to these." I don't know why, but I kinda stashed them away. Well, I picked up my journals, and that helped me recall some of these stories and what the guys look like, and some of the
Mhm.
conversations that we'd had. So, I then typed it up, and I gave it to a friend of mine, and she said, you should probably put this in a book because there's some pretty good lessons here that you learn that you could pass on," because I put takeaways
Yeah,
in the back of the
exactly.
book, right. So, I just thought I never thought I would do this, but I just decided, "You know what? I kinda wish I woulda had this book whenever I was dating." I don't know that
Right.
it would've changed anything because it's kinda like whenever you have a child, you you give them boundaries. You can play in
Yeah.
the backyard, you can climb the tree, but don't climb the fence. Well, they're gonna climb the fence anyway. So I do know that even though the stories are here and the lessons are here, people are gonna wanna, "Okay, I'm gonna try that anyway." But, that's how the book came to be.
Yeah.
And, it was more of a fun project than no self-published author grows up to be rich and famous, so
Right.
that's not why we do this. But
But I love that you're giving 10% of the proceeds to the
yes, right.
to the Par
And I
to the
thought,
Parkinson's.
that's one thing I can do that will help other Parkinson's victims is get donate so that Michael J. Fox's foundation can continue their great work because they do
Yeah.
great work.
Well, if there were, a couple of lessons that you could go back and share with yourself or share with people who are getting into the dating pool now, what would those be?
Oh, you're talking about the takeaways.
Mhm.
The first thing I always tell people is to you be you. It's very hard to be somebody else.
Yeah.
Um, and besides that, if you're presenting something that you are not, it's gonna take all of your time and energy to keep that up.
Mhm.
Nobody wants to do that. And you know what? Whoever is meant for you, male or female, is gonna love you for who you are. So you be you. That's the first thing. Um, the other thing is don't try to put a square peg into a round hole.
Mhm.
Or I guess that's another way of saying don't settle.
Right.
I I have met long-term couples that have been together for a long time, and I love that they're still madly in love with each other. I wish everybody had that. But, they'll say things like, "Oh, if only he didn't do this or that, or she didn't do this or that." And so I guess they kind of settle. But on the other hand, the other side of that coin is they are accepting them warts and all. So
Mhm.
even though there's something about them that maybe irritates them or something, it's okay. It's not a deal breaker. It's not the end of the world, and they've learned to live with it. I'd say whenever you settle is whenever you really can't live with it. It's just such an irritation.
Right. Well, Vicky, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing all of these wild lessons of the frogs you've kissed.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you so much, Stacy, for having me.
Thanks to Victoria Vaughn for joining the show to talk about her experience getting back in the dating pool. Next week, Joanne Chitwood on what it's like to be a hospice nurse. Be sure to hit that follow button in your favorite podcast app so you do not miss that episode. I'm Stacy Rain. Thanks for listening.